It's pretty much every year now where a new piece of tech comes out that's bigger, better, and that we absolutely need. The internet's flooded with glowing reviews, and that add to cart button looks shinier than ever. So, how do you qualm that upgrade fever, and how do you avoid making some pretty bad decisions?
So, today I'm going to be talking about how to know when you need to upgrade and how to avoid messing it up. Now, as a case study for this upgrade, we are going to be focusing on phones, but this can be modified and applied to basically any form of tech. So, let's get into it.
The first piece of advice I have for you if you're unsure is simply not to buy the phone on release day, and while this may sound a little bit obvious, I still think it's worth mentioning. The reason being for this is it's very easy to get swept up in things. The tweets, the unboxing videos, and the articles make thinking through a purchase much more difficult, so I would make a rule that if you're unsure whether or not you need an upgrade, don't buy it on release day. Trust me on this one, you can still get your phone after a week, and when you do, it'll be a much better thought out purchase. So yeah, I'd say leave it at least a week, ideally a little bit more, maybe 2 weeks, because at the end of the day, it's not going anywhere. Alright, so now that we've covered one of the more obvious ones, we can get into the next one. This one's kind of easy because it really doesn't require you to do anything. If you wait for some real world reviews like you can find from the Everyday Dad, Canoopsy, or yours truly, then not only will you have a much easier time deciding whether you need it or not, but also whether or not the product is right for you. Remember, the newest product isn't always the best product, so especially if you're unsure, I'd suggest A, waiting for some real world reviews, and B, trying to track down some comparison videos, either between your prospect upgrade and what you've already got, or between your 2+ considerations. And if you think I'm being totally shameless here, then A, fair enough, and B, it doesn't have to be a video review. In fact, whenever or not I'm considering whether or not I need an upgrade, I often find myself reading a lot of written reviews. Hell, it doesn't even have to be a review. Forums, Twitter, anything with a large number of users is generally a really good place to find out whether or not an upgrade is for you. A quick word on forums though, I would recommend finding one that isn't driven by hype, as typically, in my experience, I haven't exactly found these places to be great for real-world advice. They're very good on the spec side of things, but when it comes to reviewing as to whether or not you actually do need an upgrade or not, I'd personally be wary of these. The next approach I'd recommend taking if you are unsure as to whether or not you need an upgrade is to critically assess how well your phone serves you in day-to-day life. It is important to be fair here. Where the phone is good, acknowledge that it's good. But say the battery's kinda dying, or the camera's not what you want, or the screen resolution's a little low, make a note of this, because this will actually help you later down the line when it comes to choosing your new phone. By the end of this testing period, you should have a pretty good idea as to how well your phone currently serves you. If you found that your phone really didn't actually have that many issues, then there we go. Chances are you don't need to upgrade. But if you were finding that your phone was a little bit lacking in several areas, and this was especially glaringly obvious when you were taking note of them, then it might be time to look for an upgrade. The final tip I have for you is to try and take the looks out of the equation. Now, don't get me wrong, I do understand that looks are important, but often the only thing companies really change every year is the look of the phone so they can distinguish which one is the new one. If you try to forget that just for that evaluation period, then you might actually make a completely different choice. Yeah, I know this is a quick one, it might be a little bit obvious, and I personally think looks do matter. Who wants to carry around a horrible, ugly phone? I certainly don't, but looks can be deceiving, especially when deciding whether or not you actually need to upgrade. So I found that can help.
After following these simple steps, you should have a pretty good idea as to whether or not you actually need an upgrade or not. If you don't, great, you've just saved yourself a ton of money, some of which you can use to support the channel over at patreon.com/BubVisuals. Shameless plug, check. But if you decide you do need an upgrade, here are some tips to avoid screwing that up. Rule 1. Never buy on contract. Seriously, I've briefly talked about this on Twitter and in some YouTube comments, but buying on contract is a really bad idea. Not only are you paying more for that phone in the long run, but you're locking yourself into paying that fee every single month for the duration of that contract. Some phones don't even last that long. Don't buy on contract. I would advise saving your money and buying outright. Leading on from this, decide how much you want to spend. You should generally budget as to how much you're willing to spend on a phone, and then look at some appropriate options. Remember, upgrading isn't always going from like an iPhone 7 to an iPhone 12 Pro. It could mean picking up a used iPhone XR. Coming up with a figure that you're willing to spend on your new upgrade is a good way to help narrow this down. Some things you should consider when making your budget are: how often do you use your phone, how long do you plan to keep it for, and yes, any accessories, so cases, chargers, portable power banks, hell, even some of those nifty little moment lenses. All of this should definitely and thoroughly be considered before you make your decision. You shouldn't just buy something because it's on cheap or it's the most expensive. Doing either of those may result in a bad upgrade. The third thing I'd suggest is to make a list of features that you want. Some ways you can do this are you can write down all the things that annoyed you about your old phone enough to want to upgrade in the first place, so maybe battery life, poor camera performance, or maybe even lack of compatibility with something like MagSafe. And then, of course, you should also make a list of features that you just want. It doesn't have to just be about things that annoyed you about your previous phone. It could be some things that you really want to try. You might want a phone with a cool camera system. Maybe your old one only had one camera. You might want one with some cool technology and maybe multiple focal lengths. You might want to try an underscreen fingerprint scanner. Now, one word I will say on this though is probably try to avoid buying on gimmicks. While some of these gimmicks can be nice to have, you should be very careful when adding these to your list, because realistically, not all gimmicks work great. In fact, I've had some gimmicks that have worked absolutely terribly. I wouldn't even consider them working. So yeah, be aware of that. Stick to definitive functions and you're much less likely to get burned than if you were to focus on gimmicks. The next thing I'd suggest if you're not buying the absolute latest and greatest phone is to check either eBay or Apple Refurbished for some pretty good deals. Now, I've never personally used Apple Refurbished myself. I'm much more of a fan of eBay. I personally find the savings to be a little bit better there, but often, as I said, especially if you're not buying the latest and greatest, it might not be all that necessary to track down a new phone. I can personally say from experience, I've only ever owned 2 new iPhones in my life. Now, what I would say is if you're going to an Android phone, be a little bit extra careful on this part, but chances are with some good old bioprotection, you should be fine. All right, so when you've chosen your budget, you've selected your phone and you've bought it from a safe place, chances are that's going to be a really nice upgrade. Now, as I said at the start of this video, while I have more or less focused on phones throughout this video, this can pretty much be translated into any field of tech. For example, a new computer. I don't know why I did that. But yeah, going forward, if you keep this stuff in mind, then chances are you'll make less upgrades that you regret later, and the upgrades that you do make will hopefully suit you really well. Alright guys, so that's it for today. I hope you've enjoyed this one. Feel free to leave me a comment on how you choose your upgrades. Always enjoy reading those. If you want to help support the show, then feel free to check out the Patreon. You get bonus videos, awesome wallpapers, and much more. As for now though, as always, thank you for watching. Remember to like the video if you want to see more content like this, then smash that subscribe button. I'm done for now, and I will see you guys in the next one.